Nigeria has backed Saudi Arabia and Russia in freezing oil production while giving Iran and Iraq a way out to regain some of their lost market share due to sanctions and war. Now, according to the Petroleum Ministry, oil production will be 2.2 million barrels a day this month, unchanged from January. But production may increase in future to meet local demand. Now, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela and Qatar agreed last week to keep production at January levels as long as others follow suit. Now, this is an effort to revive prices from 12-year lows. Iran's production has, however, slumped since international sanctions were imposed on its exports, and Iraq is seeking to rebuild following years of war and underinvestment. Now, of course, following Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum statement that the country supports a production freeze, let's find out what the response has been so far. Now, we're joined by Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, welcome to the show. Now, of course, last week, the Minister of State for Petroleum, Kachiku, he actually said he plans to increase output to about 2.5 million barrels per day. But now he actually supports a production freeze, maintaining about 2.2 million barrels a day for the country. Now, talk to me about the reaction to this news, of course, in light of Nigeria's budget expectations.
Well, Uche, we haven't seen any, reaction, so to speak, especially from the sector. But Ibe Kachuku's comments now comes as no surprise at all, because fact is that even though he did say that Nigeria actually plans to increase production to about 2.5 million barrels per day, the fact is that we're actually managing. As a matter of fact, we're not even hitting the 2.2 million barrels per day, which is, of course, the budget benchmark. I'm talking about the 2016 budget benchmark. And then we're beginning to see crisis rear its heads now in the Niger Delta region. So there are fears that even the 2.2 million barrels per day that we have in the budget this year, that we just might not be able to meet that production level. Apart from that, I mean, let's face it too, we're also having challenges with finding buyers for our oil. And so 2.2 million barrels per day, freezing it now to 2.2 million barrels per day, fits into the budget benchmark we have for this year, which is, of course, 2.2 million barrels. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are saying there is even a possibility that the lawmakers might decide to bring it down to maybe somewhere around 1.8 or so. But we just have to wait and see what the lawmakers do. But other than that, nothing surprising at all. The budget benchmark, of course, I'm talking about the benchmark, the oil benchmark price now. We expect that will be reviewed by senators, because as we speak today, oil is currently trading for around 34 barrels $34 per barrel, and we actually budgeted 38. So we expect that lawmakers will cut that down. So basically, the comment on freezing production to 2.2 million barrels per day affects nothing at all.
President Buhari and, of course, Minister of State for Petroleum, Kachiku, are currently in the Middle East. Any thoughts on what some of the decisions or developments will be coming out from that meeting in the Middle East? And, of course, how is it going to impact Nigeria's oil sector?
Well, what we've been told is that President Buhari would be meeting with the King of Saudi Arabia and, of course, the King of Qatar, and that the leaders would discuss how to stabilize the oil price and shore things up, especially when you consider the fact that Nigeria is also affected, like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, by the fall in global oil prices. So that's what we've been told by the president's spokesperson, that Buhari would be discussing with these leaders to further that discussion on stabilizing oil prices. And President Buhari is also expected to meet with business leaders now in Saudi Arabia, that's in Riyadh and Doha, and that the plan is to ask these business leaders who are potential investors now to come to Nigeria to invest in the power sector, agriculture, mining, petroleum, and of course transportation. So basically people will be expecting that, everybody will be looking at that meeting now with the business leaders to see if Nigeria is able to attract investors from the Middle East to this country, because Uche, you know as well as I do that Nigeria needs enormous investment at the moment, especially now that oil is now in a it's no longer giving Nigeria the kind of money it used to give us in the past. So, and we're looking at diversifying the economy here. So, you know, getting investors in the mining sector, the power sector would no doubt go a long way in helping Nigeria to come out of the economic problems it is facing. Everyone is hoping that things go well and that we see these investors come to Nigeria in the long run.
Right. Well, Deji, let's shift our attention to the situation on ground. And of course, apparently, fuel queues have resurfaced in Lagos and Abuja. We might be seeing a strike by the Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association. Now, what is the situation on ground right now? And of course, how long is this likely to last?
Well, let me tell you, Uche, as we speak today, there's no queue at all. I mean, you don't have lines at petrol station. What actually happened was that sometime last week, there was this rumor that tanker drivers were going on strike, but eventually that was denied. And, you know, the moment petroleum sellers now, I'm talking about the various filling stations now, the moment they got that rumor that tanker drivers were likely to go on strike, most of them started shutting down. They stopped selling petrol. And so, you know, naturally, queues started building up. But before the end of that day, and this was actually on Saturday, last Saturday, but before the end of the day, the rumor was actually debunked. It turned out to be false, and they all started selling again. So as we speak, Uche, there are no queues in Lagos. I'm not aware there are queues in Abuja, but I have gone round the city today, and Uche, I can tell you there are no queues. Filling stations are dispensing fuel. You don't find lines at all.
Well, thank you, Deji. Of course, that's good to hear. Deji Badmus joining us from Lagos, Nigeria. Now